In Nazi Germany, they were keeping the Jews from leaving the country, but this is a serious matter. We need to think it through, be rational and thoughtful about it.
Do you agree with him that those comparisons made by the likes of former First Lady Laura Bush, are exaggerations?
Well, I think the Attorney General needs to defend his own statements, and I'll defend my statements, and my statements are about what do we need to do to fix this. And this is incredibly
You don't agree with that?
I think that again, the Attorney General is going to have to defend his own statements. I'm not going to be part of his own discussion, his debate. The debate that I'm in is the one in Congress on how do we find a bill that fixes this, the bill that the speakers brought forward addresses this. And I think it's consistent with, again, if you go to NPR's article in January that lists out where the American public are, that's where the solution is, and that's the bill that we're trying to bring forward. So one example is what
Republican Senator Ted Cruz from Texas, a border state, has proposed on this. It would mandate that kids stay with their parents. It would expedite the immigration proceedings, that these asylum cases would be heard within 72 hours, entire cases decided within 2 weeks. Is that legislation you would support?
Well, I think components of that are certainly very important, but I think the start is the bill that the speakers brought forward in the House. This is going to be a debate that is going to be ongoing. But again, everyone's talking about fixing the system, and that's where our debate needs to be. How do we fix the system?
I mean, is he right? Is that?
I think that certainly is a sound proposal, but we have to go through this process of the House bill and then the Senate bill. I think the crux of this, which is why this is so moving to Americans, is immigration is the strength and the heart of our country. I mean, we know, unlike any other country, when you raise your hand and become a United States citizen, you become an American. And from day one, equal to all other Americans. And what we want to preserve is that spirit of immigration in our country at the same time that we have a system that's absolutely broken.
Republican Congressman also from Texas, Will Hurd, said this to Anderson Cooper last night. Listen.
It's very clear that it's within Department of Justice, it's within DHS's ability to not separate kids from their parents. And so acting as if this is something that Congress is preventing from happening is just incorrect. And it's something that this administration could change right away.
So you're meeting with the administration, the president today. Will you call on the president to change this policy, quote, right away, just as your fellow Republican congressman said Congress can and should?
Well, I think there are a lot of calls for that, and certainly I think the president, if he has an ability to do that, should do that.
But I'm saying, will you, Congressman, you get to be in the room. Hold on one second. You get to be in the room. We don't get to be in the room.
I get to answer it, right?
But you're not answering it.
The question was, what will I call the president on?
To end the practice.
It is to support the House bill that I think reflects the American public's sentiment on immigration reform, which includes ending the separation of families at the border. Now, that's important. That's what do we do next.
It is, but as you know, legislation takes time, especially now, to get through both chambers.
Well, without the president stepping forward and saying he supports this legislation, you still have the gridlock that you have.
Okay,
so that's important.
Let's say he says he supports it. In the interim, before it maybe makes it through both chambers and gets enough votes, will you call on the president to stop the practice, his administration's practice right now, that is effectively resulting in these separations?
Well, I'm opposed to the practice. If the president has the ability, certainly the president should in the practice.
Okay.
But I think more importantly, we have to talk about what are we going to do moving forward.
He does
and the president needs to help us
go
through the process of legislation. And I think that today, hopefully, he will support the Speaker's bill that's a way out of this that reforms immigration.
One final question to you, Steve Stivers from your great state of Ohio, who chairs the Republican National Campaign Committee, came out yesterday and called on the administration to, quote, stop needlessly separating children from their families. Now, that was a sign, some analysts said, to more vulnerable Republicans in their districts to say it's okay to break with the president on this issue. Are you concerned about the optics of all of this and what it means for your party heading into the midterms if this practice is not stopped very soon?
Well, again, the bill that's in the House that the Speaker's bringing forward has in it language to end this practice. So
I understand, but it just takes a long time if you can actually get it through Congress.
You asked me about their position.
But clearly, I asked you about the optics if this practice
the Republican House is that this practice ends.
I asked you about the optics if the practice doesn't stop soon.
I think that people have to stand on what their own positions are. My position is that I don't support this.
Right.
And there's a bill in the House that I support that would end the practice, and I think certainly everyone who is opposed to the practice would support the administration to the extent that they can of ending the practice.
We've got to wrap.
I don't see how that's different other than today the president's coming forward, and I hope he endorses the bill.
It's different because the president endorsing the bill doesn't mean the practice stops. Final yes or no answer.
Well, if the president
does it hurt the party? Does it hurt the Republican Party if this practice of separating families from children doesn't end in the near term?
I don't
Does
think
it hurt
this is
the
a
party in the
partisan issue.
midterm?
I think it hurts families, and I think it hurts our country, and I think that's what's more important. And that's why the president should end the practice if he's able to. But he should endorse the bill that ends the practice legislatively also, and that reforms immigration, because that's where we need to go.
Final line from you is the president should end the practice if he's able to. He is able to. It's his administration's practice. Let us know what comes out of the meeting, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You're always welcome. We appreciate it. So, to the markets, new trade tension hitting new levels. The president threatens new tariffs, 200 billion of them on Chinese goods. Allison Cossack on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange with more. The market does not like that this morning. What are you seeing?
The market not liking it. One analyst putting it this way: buckle up, this could get messy. You know, Poppy, the latest skirmish began actually on Friday when President Trump announced a 25% tariff on $50 billion worth of Chinese exports. China vowed to retaliate on American high-value products like pork, soybeans, crude oil, and cars. Well, the Trump administration late last night came out and said, look, China, if you retaliate, we are going to go ahead and slap another $200 billion in tariffs on those Chinese exports. The interesting thing with that announcement is that $200 billion, that could actually wind up affecting products that consumers here in the U.S. use. You know, the American consumer is a big consumer of Chinese products, everything from clothing to shoes to makeup products. So if those tariffs actually come to fruition, the $200 billion, because that's a little less than half of what the U.S. actually buys from China in the first place, consumers could really wind up feeling it in their wallets. As for investors, they're worried about where this trade battle could escalate. Right now, if you look at what's happening, we're only seeing aluminum and steel tariffs actually taking effect. But if these other threats of tariffs actually come to fruition, there's a lot of uncertainty, and that's what has the market looking to sell at the open. We are about 13 minutes away from the opening bell. Poppy, the Dow looking to drop over 300 points at the open. Poppy?
All right, Allison, thank you. I'm glad you're there. We'll come back to you. Ahead for us a lot this hour, something you don't see every day. All 5 former First Ladies, party aside, united on family separation at the border. More on that ahead. Also, a week after his historic meeting with President Trump, Kim Jong-un makes his 3rd trip to China since March. What impact will that have on future U.S. negotiations with Kim? And round 2 for the Justice Department's watchdog, the Inspector General testifying on Capitol Hill about his investigation into the Clinton email probe. What else will we learn today?